Christians, children of God, we're not supposed to be afraid. We know that. But from an emotional perspective, that connection quite hasn't been made many times. And so we want to talk about that in our first session today. And I'm going to jump into the Word of the Lord. Got several verses here. Jesus is talking here, and he says in Luke chapter 12, I'm going to read starting with verse 22. We're going to go all the way through 44 to lay a premise for where we're going today. Jesus said unto his disciples, Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, neither for the body, what ye shall put on. The life is more than meat, and the body is more than raiment. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which neither have storehouse nor barn, and God feedeth them. How much more are ye better than the fowls? And which of you, with taking thought, can add to his stature 1 cubit? If ye then be not able to do that thing which is least, why take ye thought for the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothe the grass, which is today in the field, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye of little faith? And seek not ye what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind. For all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourself bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, nor moth corrupteth. For, verse 34, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. All right, so a lot of stuff in there, and if you didn't pick up on it, that was the King James Version. You can read it in others if you like, when you will. But I want to set the scene for what was going on here in this setting. Jesus was talking to a huge crowd of people, thousands of people in the crowd that day. And there were so many that they were jostling each other, bumping on each other. And they're out in the open air. They're up on a hillside overlooking the lake, which was the Sea of Galilee. It was a lovely scene, the lake spreading out below them, sparkling, tucked between the dry hills that were there in the present. Fishermen were out fishing in their small boats, and around them, wheat was growing in small plots of land, and in between patches of rough or fallow ground. The crowd was mostly, that day, simple people, whether they were farmers, dirt farmers, or fishermen, or peasant women. And so here's how this conversation started going on that particular day. Jesus had been talking to them about 2 things. Who they were most afraid of, number 1, whether it was God or other people. And then, secondly, what their attitude was towards him. And then, when that stage is set, Jesus pushes the topic forward another step, and he's been talking to the crowd. Now he starts talking directly to the people, like in the front row seats, those who were right there within spitting distance, as many of you are here today, just in case you didn't know that. And so this where this passage begins. Jesus talks straight to his disciples. to his friends, to the people that loved him, and to the people that knew him. He said, "For this reason I say unto you, don't worry about your life, what you are going to eat." Previously, Jesus had said that if you don't have something, then don't get greedy. He said, if you don't have something, don't be greedy. And even if you have a lot, it's not your life, so don't rely on it. That's what Jesus has said previously. Now, Jesus is applying the same principles to a different problem. Even if you don't have a lot of money, and that would include most of us here today, I'm sure, at least in our mind. Even if you don't have a lot of money, or as much as you think you need, money is still not your life. And here in America, money is at least a small letter G God to many people. Jesus saying it's not your life. Money is not your life, so don't get anxious about it. Don't worry about it. Don't bother about it. Money can't make you or break you. He's saying don't worry about what you'll eat or your body, what you're going to put on. Don't worry about those things. Your life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. So we have to remember here, in looking at this scenario, we're going to dig through it as much as time will allow us, that Jesus is talking to what could be referred to as a subsistence culture. He wasn't talking to the rich. He was talking to very poor farmers, to very poor fishermen, to people selling a few things in the marketplace. He was talking to a third world village. And most of us here, I would suppose, have food in our cupboards. Most of us have clothing in our closets. And a lot of times we take those things for granted. And yet we worry about money as well. And Jesus goes right to the basics. He goes to food. So he's talking to people. He goes to food. He goes to clothing. He goes to shelter. Three major needs that we have, among others. So, are you going to starve tomorrow, or are you going to live tomorrow? It's like what they were doing at this particular stage is they were living day by day, literally. And although our situations today are different, the same issues, attitudes, temptations play out. Your life is more than food. Your life is more than money. So that's how Jesus is starting this message that he's communicating. And then he lists reason after reason why you should not be in the grip of fear and worry. He first says, consider the ravens. So Jesus was talking outside to this group of thousands of people. He's outside in the open in Palestine, and he said, consider the ravens. Their type of raven or crow happened to be a gray-hooded crow. And those crows, they're flying around while Jesus is talking to the masses. They're flying around overhead, and they're cawing, and they're hopping around on the ground, squabbling with each other. And Jesus says, take a look at those crows. Think about them for a moment. They're not sowing. They're not reaping. They don't have storerooms. They don't have barns. They don't make any preparations, and they have no storage, and yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than these birds? So basically, they were garbage birds, ravens. They squabble. It would seem like they have not a lot of value among the bird population. And yet, Jesus points them out and he says, how much more valuable are you than these squabbling, obnoxious birds flying around overhead and potentially decorating the tops of your head, which could have been going on quite literally. And then Jesus adds a second reason. He says, which of you by worry can add a single hour to his lifespan? If you can't do this little thing, okay, Jesus is saying, if you can't do this little thing, this easy thing, adding an hour to your lifespan, if you can't do that, then why do you worry about the rest of things in life? And then Jesus gives a third reason. He keeps piling it on. He says, now let's look around us. Let's consider the lilies. He's not talking about fancy flowers here. He's not talking about some of the cool lilies that we like to cut and bring into our home that smell good and look cool. It's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the kind of tough wildflower that grows in a vacant lot or by the roadside or among the weeds. And these are poor people. Remember that. They don't have flower gardens. They don't have a beautiful array of colors of different types of flowers in their backyards or in their front yards or their living room in pots. They don't have that. He says, look at these flowers over there. See how they're growing. They're not toiling. They're not spinning. They're not putting out any effort in order to look pretty. And then Jesus says, but I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. If God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown in the furnace, how much more is he going to take care of you? How much more is he going to clothe you? You of little faith. He's really kind of dumping on them. And then Jesus gives them a fourth reason. And this comment deals not so much with feelings or anxiety, feelings of anxiety, as with what you are living for, what your purpose is. Jesus describes that driven, that obsessed state of mind, the preoccupation with money, the preoccupation with possessions, with material things. And he says, don't seek what you are going to eat and drink, and don't keep worrying. He doesn't mean, Jesus is not communicating here, don't have a job. He's not saying quit your job. What he means is don't make that your life objective. Don't continue to strive to get a better job and make more money, and making more money is fine, but not when that becomes our priority, not when that is what is driving us. All of these things, the nations of the world, he said, eagerly seek. This is what people do. He's communicating to them. In other words, that's their business. That's what they're about. That's what's driving them. That's what everybody in the world is into. He says, your Father, talking about your Heavenly Father, knows that you need these things. Your Father knows that you need a job. He knows that you need a way in which to accumulate funds so you can take care of your day-to-day expenses. Your Father knows this. But he said, instead of pursuing that, instead of being driven for these earthly things, he says, seek the kingdom of God first. And then these things that your Father know that you need, those things will be added to you. Those things will be given to you. And so God is saying here that he's letting us know not to live for the one thing that everybody else lives for. There's two names that are famous in our country, the Smiths and the Jones. Are any of you here, are there any Smiths or Jones here? Very good. So we all want to be like the Jones. You know, we all want to be like the Smiths. We want what they want. When they get something new, we want something new. And in the neighborhood, a lot of neighborhoods, somebody gets a boat, all of a sudden now there's several other boats that pop up. Somebody gets an RV or a new car. In our congregation on the east side of town, one person gets a new car, and it seems, now I can't validate this because I haven't paid that much attention to it, but it seems that there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 new ones that follow that one pretty quick. I got the Lord blessed us 3 years ago this month with a new Subaru. We got a pretty good deal on it at the time, and good interest rate, and it was blue, Forester, and it wasn't long before there was 3 of those in the parking lot at church, not just one. They weren't. I don't know that they had anything to do with this, but it's just funny when I notice that. And sometimes we get confused where we're headed after church. Which one is ours? So Jesus is piling up reason after reason after reason. It's like Paul in Philippians chapter 4, where he tells the Philippians not to be anxious about anything. The guy's writing from jail. He's writing to people that are concerned, had a lot of the same concerns as we're talking about here, that had legitimate human reasons to be anxious, to be fearful, and yet Paul tells them not to fear, not to be anxious. And here Jesus is saying the same things to this crowd today. So he's given several reasons not to get hung up on money, even when survival is at stake. And that's not easy to do, right? It's tough. It's hard to put our trust in the Lord when we don't have when we're not making enough to pay the bills from month to month, from week to week, from day to day. And the preacher gets up and said, trust in the Lord, and we want to, but it's not an easy thing, and so we go through these learning curves until we get there. And so, that's not new today. That's been going on for millennia. So what Jesus is saying here, what he's talking about is leading to pretty radical implications in our life, in our lifestyle. He's saying, he goes on, he says, sell your possessions and give it to charity. You know, what a cool thought is that, as long as we are the charity, you know. That's why I operate a nonprofit, which is nonprofit, and I do give tax receipts, as well as the church here. We do that. I don't know why I went down that road. So Jesus is communicating. You know, what he's doing is he's creating this scenario that everybody there relates to, and just like with the rich young ruler, he's going to the very core of where their heart is, where their passion is, what they are driven about. You know, the Bible talks about the rich young ruler, and he went away sad because he had great possessions. The inference there was that He loved his money. His money was more of a priority to him. There was no way he was going to sell everything and give it to the poor. But what Jesus is interested in then and today is that he is numero uno in our life, number one in our life. And I know we're Christians. I know we love God. You all are here on a Saturday for a reason, and I respect that. If I wore a hat, I'd take it off, but I don't, so I won't. But you're here, and that's a good thing. And yet, where is your heart? What is number one for you? And when we, in our society, when we talking about money, that's like, those are fighting words, right? Because for some, it's about survival. For others, it's about just accumulating more and more and more and more. And either side of that, the desire for money is, if it's supreme in our life, then it will come between us and God. And that's not what he's interested in. So instead of every form of greed, the question is, what's in it for me? I want my share. I've got a lot so I can sit comfortably. What if I don't have enough? All these questions, thoughts go through our mind. Maybe I won't get something I need, or instead of get more, hold on to what you got, want to get, worry that you won't get. Instead of all that, you can give because you've been given too. They're giving and getting, and another thought that would go through the mind is, it's easy for you to say. You're standing up there. It's easy for you. Here's the logic. Oops. Oh, I missed one. That's the fifth one. Don't be afraid, little flock. And that's a big one. Oops, sorry. So, and I could address that, but he's referred, and let me do that in a short. This little flock. The term "little flock" is a term of endearment. It really is kind of cool when you study that out. He knows who you are today. He knows your name. He knows every one of us that are here. He knows more about us than we do. And he's telling us, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to fear. So, he's got all these reasons. Let me give you the logic here. Your Father, who loves you, gives you a life that you can give away and not lose. He loves you so much that you can, he gives you your life that you can pour out, that you can give away and still not lose. Now, what happens, if I had thought about this, maybe it's a good thing I didn't, but if I thought about this, I could have pulled out a bunch of $10 bills out from somewhere. And I could have brought one and handed it out. Handed every one of you a $10 bill. Or, if we're going to go like that, let's go with a $100 bill. Is that more impressive? You just hand out a $100 bill. I don't know that I've ever seen a $1,000 bill, but why stop at 100? My point is, if I brought and I handed one of those bills out to everybody here, would I still have that in my pocket? Would it still be mine? No. You all would probably take it and run. There'd be nobody left, and I'd have to eat lunch all by myself. And my daughter, because she rode with me. But here, Jesus is saying that you can give and give and give and still retain. And that's foreign to us. So, he says, make yourselves money belts that don't wear out, that unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes and no moth destroys. Then he says, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. So far the Word of God is everything that you've heard today with little amplification. So I want to go over some points, bring some points to your attention here today. Number one is that you've got plenty of good reasons to worry. So I've said everything I've said, and then there's my point. Legitimately, you have good reasons to worry. And we can focus on those. When you think about it, they're valid. And I hear this a lot of times, you don't understand. Research that you don't understand. And a lot of times I don't. And that's okay. I'm not the one that needs to understand, really. So, let me give you some examples. The people that Jesus is talking to, they're poor. They have primitive sanitation. They have no health care. Their lives immediately depend on whether it rains or not. When drought comes there, they die. There are legitimately things to worry about, and it's one of the topics where I know that the shoe fits today. I know something about each one of us here in the room today, in that we worry. We do worry. We can call it something different, but ultimately we do worry. And you happen to know something about me today, and that's the same thing. I worry. So we all put our own spin on the temptation to worry. It's one of the universals. We all get obsessed about the wrong things. If for those of you that are 6 years old today, one of the things that may come to mind is in thinking about a sibling, older sibling, the thought that my older brother makes $3 more on his allowance. Why does he get more? Why does he get more than I do? If only I had those extra $3, I could do a whole lot more than what I'm getting currently with my measly allowance. And then if you're the 10-year-old brother, the one that's older, they're thinking, my sister's 16, she's got it made, she's lucky, she has a job. If only I had a job, wouldn't that be great? And that would solve all of my worries. But, now you've got bills to worry about. Everything you want or need costs more. I still think it's quite interesting that teenagers need to get a job so they can pay for a car. And the reason why they need a job is so that not only can they pay for the car, but they can pay for the gas to get to the job. And they just start this cycle early on in life. I'm not saying that our teenagers shouldn't work, but that's the mindset. And so we teach them early on how to get on the rat race of life. So now, as those young people, you get an after-school job and you're able to put some spending money in your pocket, and if you can remember back, you still worry. Am I going to get into college? How are we going to pay for college? What kind of part-time job or student loan am I going to need? If you're in college or just graduating, then the question comes, am I going to get a job? And what if there's no work? My parents have jobs, so they're all set, but there's not much out there for me. And you worry about getting a job, and then you get that real job, and then the question comes, will I ever have enough money for a house? And how am I going to be able to afford kids? And will they be able to go to school? And even with a job, you find lots more reasons to worry. There's always legitimate reasons to worry. And then you get old like me and start doing, or it's kind of late for this, but start doing financial planning for retirement, which should have been done 40 years ago. I used to, back in my early 20s, I did some financial stuff and had one of those calculators. And back then, interest rates were high, as some of you might remember that. And people were making like 18% of their money. And so if you just give $166 back then, an IRA contribution was $2,000 a year. So we put it out, if you just give $166 to your retirement, by the time you get to 65, you'll have buku bucks, millions and millions of dollars in your account. If you wait until you're 35 and start that, then you have a whole lot less. And the compound interest and all that. So, but that didn't happen for me. I drained my account to buy a house and then lost my house. Maybe I didn't worry enough about it. I don't know. But, there's all kinds of, we just keep going. There's always something to worry about all through life. There are legitimate things to worry about. Amen. There's always something to worry about. One of the things that makes money such a neat worry to think about is that it has an obsessive component. It's always there. It says, good night. It says good night to you, and it wakes up in the middle of the night and says hello to you, and it greets you in the morning with, here I am. Let's think about this. Think about me, and we're going to have some good times together today. It gets you on your drive to work. It gets you on your drive home, just reminding you that I'm here. Don't forget about me. So financial worries play with the mind. You know what I'm saying, right? You've been there, or you are there, or you will be there. Financial things play with our mind. It provides a good example for all the other worries that operate in exactly the same way. And so we have multiple things that are driving our mind and our thought processes and our worries. And what you see in common with all the things we worry about, every single thing, is that they are all uncertain. We have no promise of tomorrow. We have no promise that our retirement account is going to be solid tomorrow. We have no promise that our house is going to be there tomorrow, or that our car is going to be there tomorrow, or that our job is going to be. We have no promise. We take these things for granted, but we legitimately have no promise of them. They're all uncertain. They're all iffy. Am I going to get what I want, what I need? Maybe, maybe not. If I have it, can I lose it? Maybe, maybe not. So we worry about stuff that is inherently uncertain, and so you've got good reasons to worry, because you can never be sure, right? Money's a great starting point, but maybe there could be other things today that would be plaguing you as well. The question I have for each of us today is, what hijacker sees the controls of your mind? What is controlling your thought process on a day-to-day basis? And I'd like you to consider that. I'd like you to personalize that. Each one of you today. What are the 1, 2, 3, maybe 6 or 12 things that tend to snag you and take a hold of your mind on a day-to-day basis? What do you tend to worry about? And maybe it's not financial, or in addition to financial, there could be other worries. Do I have any real friends? What if I don't make the team? What if I don't get the promotion? If I find one, if I find a husband or wife, will he or she be faithful to me? Am I worth marrying myself? Will I be able to have children? If I have children, how will they turn out? What about my health? You know, some of my friends have passed away because of cancer. It's painful. Is that the way it's going to be for me? Will I be able to have the strength to go through that? What if I get Alzheimer's? The thought of ending my life, not even able to recognize the people I love. What about that? Now, on and on and on and on. There are legitimate reasons, all kinds of things to worry about, and any of these things can hijack the controls of our mind. So we worry, fret, and stew. And the fact is that these are all iffy. And if you have good reasons to worry about those, you do have good reasons to worry about those things. None of them are sure. Your health could go to the dogs, so to speak. The stock market could crash. There could be no jobs. The kids could turn out rotten. You could end up lonely. You could fail at something or get excluded. These are all unsureties by nature. There's every reason in the world to worry about them. So, what do you worry about? What do you worry about? There's a second personalizing question to ask yourself when all is said and done. Why do I worry? Why do you worry? Why do you fret about these things in the first place? Why do you obsess? Why do you get preoccupied and driven, or throw panic attacks, or why do you brood, or whatever form of your anxiety takes? Why? The easy answer is to point your finger towards what you're worrying about and to think that that explains it. That's why, this is why. And we point to everything and anybody, that's why. I'm worried because I don't know if I'm going to actually get the promotion. I'm worried because I don't have enough saved for what I need. I'm worried because I have a family history of some kind of ailment. But Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't show us that example. He explains our worries not by pointing to how uncertainty life is, but rather by pointing to something in us. So he's not pointing to everything else in the world. He's pointing directly to something inside of us. Throughout this whole passage, Jesus says that you worry because of something about you. You worry because of something. Excuse me. Sorry. Apologize. So you're worrying about something that's going on inside of you, not because of the things that you worry about. It's deeper. It's inside of you. What's driving the anxiety is inside of you, and that's what he threw over the table in the interchange just before the passage that we're focusing on. He's guard yourself from every form of greed. So covetous greed will make you angry and manipulative, and you'll even break in to interrupt Jesus when he's talking. Jesus, you don't understand what's going on in my life. There's a different kind of greed, and that's set. So there's covetous greed, and then there's a different kind, satisfied greed. I'm set. I can kick back. I've got plenty in life. Satisfied greed throws you off when it comes to money or any other aspect of life. You could care less about what really matters because ease lulls you to sleep. So in the passage right in front of us, where Jesus is talking to his disciples, his friends, about not being anxious, he goes after a third form of greed. He says, what if I don't have enough? What if what I need isn't there? And that is anxious greed. I want something I might not get, so I worry. Anxious greed. And a little later on in this passage, Jesus captures the same thing from a different angle. He says, oh, you have little faith. And what he means by that is not that you have no faith. If you remember, he's talking to his disciples. And so we can think of this metaphor by what happens to us. It's like a flashlight with drained batteries. You put those batteries in the flashlight initially, and the light that it shines out is bright. But if you leave the flashlight on, the batteries are going to start to diminish in power. And so what's going to happen to the light? It's going to diminish. It's still there, but not as much there. And so Jesus is saying to his disciples, you have little faith. There's some faith there, but it's not what it needs to be. Their faith was evaporating. So we can lose sight of God because what we want and worry about is the only thing that we see. And one of the things that Jesus does here is to help us spot things. Why do I worry? What makes me forget? Why do I fret? Why do I lose it with people? When faith is dying out, greed and worry come to life. And when anxious greed comes to life, it kills off faith. It kills off faith. The middle of this passage that we read gives you another take on why you worry. Jesus says, which of you, by worrying, can add a single cubit to his stature? A single hour to his stature. If you can't even do a small thing like that, then why are you worrying about the rest of this stuff? So worriers act as if they might be able to control the uncontrollable. We worry about what we can't control, but we worry anyway because we think we can. We should be able to, but we can't, so we worry. There's something central to the problem of worry. It's the illusion that we can control things, which is an illusion. We cannot control things. We cannot control people. We cannot control it. We have a hard enough time controlling ourselves, which is the only one that we can control. If only I could get my retirement right, I could control the future. If only I could get my diet and medicine right, I wouldn't get sick. If only I could figure out the right child rearing techniques, I could guarantee how my children will turn out. Control and worry assumes the possibility of control over the uncontrollable. You cannot control what you cannot control. I think that was worth the price of admission right there. And yet we still think we can, or we try. So, anxiety and control are two sides of one coin. We want to control something. Since we can't control it, we worry about it. Jesus' final comment gives you one more handle on why you worry. A worrier is storing treasure in the wrong place or places. If what you most value can be taken away or destroyed, then you set yourself up for anxiety. Is it money? Is it your health? And those things are important, right? But if that's where the most value that we, if that's the highest value in our life, then we're going to stress about losing them. Maybe it's a particular friendship that you have. Maybe it's the dream of marriage. Maybe it's success in sports or business. Maybe it is how your children are going to turn out. And even when you feel good, when everything's going your way, if what is most important to you is any of these things that you cannot control, what you're doing is you're building your house on sand. Your treasure is vulnerable. And if your treasure is vulnerable, you are going to worry. Not that it's not important. Those things, we are to be good stewards. So whenever what is precious to you is threatened, you will be gripped with fear. That's guaranteed. It will happen. So the question is, where do you store your treasure? Do you store your treasure in iffy things, or do you store your treasure in certainties? Jesus, he takes apart why we worry. Says, so why do you worry? What desires are you greedy for? What life objectives snuff out your awareness of God? What wants make you want to control your world? Grasp those things, and Jesus' alternative will become very, very precious to you. So it's not that we don't have legitimate things to worry about. It's what is the most important thing in our life. And if the most important thing in our life is not our relationship with Jesus Christ, then we are going to struggle. So, that's premise number one. How much more time do I have? I know we started late. As now, I have been in sessions where people said that, and I'd sit there. Don't say that. Just don't. I'd be on the other side, worrying that they would take their time.
This is really good.
That's why we're about 47 minutes from when we started. Because the clock went when we started. There is no clock.
Does anybody need to stand? You want to stretch? Let's take a couple minutes. We'll stand and stretch, and then we'll put it in overdrive. Maybe. Oh, look at this. Somebody put some water. Wonderful.
Even before you asked.
I know. It's precious.
That was Pastor Murray's.
Do we need to do some calisthenics? Head and shoulders, knees and toes? Yeah. All right, now that you've had a couple minutes. Snacks have I none, but such as I have, give I unto thee. easier to say than to do, right? We acknowledge that. All right. I'm going to take one more minute and then I'm going to start up. This is not a 15-minute break. This was a 3-minute break. Because I know, I feel the same way. I got up this morning, had a meeting, an international men's meeting at 9 o'clock. Was in that for an hour. Grabbed a few things, jumped in the car, came here. I have a men's meeting I attend every Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. And we've got somebody from Africa in there and other parts of the country. Awesome. All right. Let's jump back into it. And we'll keep going. So, premise number one is that you have legitimate things to worry about. Can we establish that? Everybody agree? There are things, legitimate things in this life. We have good reasons to worry. All right. The second premise is that you've got plenty of better reasons not to worry. You've got good reasons to worry, but you've got better reasons not to worry. Jesus has really no interest in simply talking about what's wrong with us. You ever get into conversations and somebody's got lots of things that they can bring to your attention that's wrong with you, and then the conversation's over, and it's like you just leave me in the precipice of whatever. That's not what Jesus is doing here. He always has somewhere good to take us. He does make reference to the temptations that you face during anxiety, and to some of the ways that you go off the rails, and to how your faith dims when you fail into greed. But this passage is largely about giving you lots of solid reasons not to worry. You have good reasons to worry, but lots of things are, because lots of things are uncertain, but you have many, many better reasons not to worry. There are some things in life that we've covered that are uncertain, but there are some things in life that are certain. They are certain. And that's where Jesus is going and where he aims to take us. It's a very encouraging story that Jesus tells. He lays it on very thick and fast for his disciples, and he piles up reason after reason, and he woos them in winning and informing and encouraging them. And so I tell you today, this afternoon now, that I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be persuaded. I want you to be heartened. Fear not does not hang in space as a moral platitude. Jesus gives you solid reason after solid reason to live without fretting, even when you're facing the very things that you're inherently uncertain and cannot control. There are 7 promises. 7. I was holding up 5. 7 promises from what Jesus says. 7 reasons that you're not to worry, and we're going to look at those. And so before we wrap up here, this portion. So as we go through this, I want you to make this personal, okay? it's easy for us to think things like, man, I wish they were here, or I hope they're listening to this. I promise you, everybody that's here is listening. And if you think I'm talking to you, you're right, I am. So we can dispel that. Yeah. So let's if you'll, as we go through this portion, personalize. Which of these do you find most inviting to you? Which one is the most necessary, helpful? Which one of these can you say, if I remember blank, blank, a blank, there's a blank there, not a blank, blank, but a blank. If I remember, I'll be a different person this week. If I can tag on to this, it will make a big difference in my life. So personalize one of these. Jesus starts out by saying, your life is so much more than food or clothing. There's so much more to who you are than what you have or don't have. Jesus refers back to the story of the rich man who was a fool. And for this reason, points back to what he just said. The rich man's life was not made by the fact that he had lots of money. I referred to him earlier. Money couldn't give him identity or meaning or security of life. We think it does, but it doesn't. Nobody has enough. These guys that are multi-billionaires don't have enough. People that have $10 in their pocket don't have enough. What you have does not define you. What defines you is what is within, where your treasure is. And so Jesus adds here, the rich young ruler, the money couldn't give him identity or meaning or security of life. So Jesus adds, if that's so, then your life can't be unmade by the fact that your finances are tight. What you have or don't have is not what's playing in the theater of the universe. Your life is more than food and clothes. For starters, what matters a lot more is, who do you fear? Who do you fear, and what do you do with Jesus? These are life and death questions and things that need to be answered. You've probably known individuals, as I have, where it's obvious that they are living for very empty, foolish reasons or things. And have you ever seen a 23-year-old woman who was living to be beautiful? I've seen that. She's living for her face. And you may say, well, that's the stupidest thing in the world. If you live for your face, the best thing that can happen is you grow old and get wrinkly. Except for those that spend buku bucks to get rid of the wrinkles. And then that does strange things. So it's a losing bet right from the start. If your external is more important than your internal, that's problematic. What if you live for your health or for your athleticism or for adventures? Inevitably, you start to get knee injuries after you turn 35. I used to love playing, not so much softball, but most people are more comfortable with softball, so I would play softball, and I was 35 years old, and we were in Washington for 5 years, moved back to Oregon to Hood River, and shortly after that I was out playing softball with a church group, and my rotator cuff rotated out of the cuff. And my shoulder swinging the bat, and it rotated back in, and so I kept playing. And I got up to bat again and did the same thing, except it didn't rotate back in all the way. And so that's the last time I've ever swung a bat. I got old, 35. I got old. Who would have thunk? Never played again. If that was my identity, I'd been shot. Systems start to break down. Sooner or later, we are going to go to sleep for the last time. It's like that you have everything. It's like that with everything that we live for and everything that we worry about. If you worry about money, then you are banking on a clunker. Your car, or if you live for money, your car can be a lemon, but if you spend everything you have on it, it's always going to break down. It's going to give you a reason to have worries on top of your worries and more worries on top of that. Your life is so much more than that. But if that's where your identity is, then that's what's going to captivate your thought processes and your anxieties and your worries. There are better things to give your energies to. I promise you that. I promise you that there is something much more important going on in your life than the stuff that you worry about. And I'm not minimizing the stuff that you worry about. I'm elevating the second point. Go through your worry list one by one. Create a worry list. Go through it. Jesus promises that your life is more than whatever. You can fill in the blank. Something much bigger is at play here. And so that's promise number one. Jesus doesn't give us much detail about what is more important here, but he promises that life is more than your worries. Life is more than your worries. The second reason, Jesus tells people to look around. He said, open your eyes, look at the world. In this case, he said, look at the crows, look at the birds flying overhead. It's like saying, notice rabbits in the field, notice the pigeons, notice the cats that are running around outside, notice some common, not very appealing animal that you take for granted. Jesus says, consider the ravens. We mentioned that. So, and how God feeds them. He takes care of them, even though they don't put a single seed in the ground. They don't even water their crops. They don't store a thing for next year, not even for tomorrow. They live for the moment by moment, day by day, but God still provides for them. And how much more important are you than the ravens? How does God feed them? Think about that for a moment. It's not an exciting thought. It's not a romantic thought, but how does God feed them? The crow's a scavenger. Jesus isn't painting a sweet little picture of God feeding the poor, helpless birdies. These aren't cute little babies looking up to mama bird to give them a worm. Crows are tough. They're dirty birds. They're aggressive. They're smart. They're savvy. They're noisy. They're obnoxious. They are pests. They're scavengers. How does God feed crows? Roadkill. Trash picking. Raiding your crops. Which is why people that have gardens have scarecrows. God feeds the crows by the fact that they steal your food and pick over your garbage. How cool is that? And he takes care of them. And he says, you are much more important than that. You are more important than crows. The scavengers get fed, but how much more does he care about you? So if you can personalize this and see what Jesus is saying here, God feeds a bird, even a trash bird, one of the Old Testament unclean birds, unclean animals, a carrion bird that lives on roadkill and theft. People matter a whole lot more to God. And that's a promise that you can take home. Now that may seem frivolous, But that's a huge deal. You're more important than the crows. And so Jesus keeps going. He adds a third reason, a different kind of reason, a simple logical reason. He says, which of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to his life? This is a bit of a difficult phrase to translate. Literally, what Jesus is saying here is, which of you, by worrying, can add a cubit to his span? What does that mean? A cubit is a distant measure. It's approximately 18 inches. Approximately 18 inches. Approximately from your elbow to your top of your middle finger. Some it's going to be more than 18, some a little less. It's a cubit, roughly averaging 18 inches. And the Bible envisions life as a walk. It talks all about life as a walk. You walk through life step by step by step. And Jesus is saying you won't even get 18 inches further by worrying. You're not going to be able to add 18 more inches to your life, to be able to walk 18 more inches to your life by worrying. Worrying is not going to help you get further down the road. You can't even get half a step further by worrying. So if we think about that, worrying does and accomplishes what? Nothing. Nothing. It accomplishes zero, except that it does blow a lot of our time and effort and create stress and is negative on our physical anatomy and affects other components, our mental capabilities, our relationships, our spiritual walk with God. But other than that, it doesn't accomplish anything positive. So I promise you that you won't get your 18 inches further down the path of your life. Our first promise, there's something bigger going on in your life than the things that you worry about. Our second promise is that you matter more than the crows. God feeds them and he will surely feed you. The third promise is it's pointless to worry, so don't fool yourself by thinking that worry can accomplish anything. And then here's Jesus' fourth promise, a fourth better reason not to worry. So we just, he says, consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They don't toil, they don't spin. Yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory is not clothed like one of these. And as I said earlier, he's not talking about orchids. He's not talking about hybrid roses. He's not even talking about the tiger lilies that bloom in banks of color in the summer. He's not talking about any of that. Jesus is pointing to weed flowers. Weed flowers. I remember as a child seeing these beautiful yellow flowers growing in our yard. I thought, that's awesome. I wonder who planted those. And one time I went and picked a bunch and I took them to my mother. I was impressed, but she wasn't so impressed. I don't remember what happened to them, but I didn't see them around. But more took their place. I picked them and more came along, so it's all good. It says, consider the lilies of the field and how they grow. Jesus is pointing to these weed flowers growing in vacant lots, splashes of color in the midst of rocks and brambles and tough grasses. God makes beautiful the flowers that grow on their own beside the road that don't get any tending, flowers that nobody planted and nobody really takes care of except God himself. So we think of those little bright blue flowers that grow out of the gravel beside the road. Imagine wild morning glories, tough and hardy and beautiful. So Jesus starts with the same logic as with the crows. He says, look around, look at that. See what I've done. But then Jesus ups the ante this time If God makes mere wildflowers so glorious that their beauty outdazzles Solomon in all his glory, the richest man in the Old Testament, how much more will you outdazzle the lilies? Oh, you of little faith, he says. Do you see? Do you get that? And so this promise is far more than God will take care of you. This is God will clothe you in nothing less than his radiant glory. And so why do you worry about the clothes you wear? He says, I'll dress you in my own glory. Why do you worry about your health? I'll raise you from the dead to eternal life. Why do you worry about a few dollars? I'll give you the whole earth as your inheritance. Why do you worry about someone who doesn't like you? I'll make you live in the kingdom of my love. There's so much, the things that we worry about many times are superficial, really. We've figured out that there are some valid reasons, but there are a whole, it's where it goes back to where our treasure is. That's where our heart's going to be. What is our sense of value? What do we identify with? And so this is the fourth promise. And when you get it, it's a spectacular reason not to worry. It's far more than giving you nice clothes. God has given you a life that is radiant and indestructible and full of glory. I mentioned the 23-year-old lady that her identity was her face and her beauty, and that lasts for a while. But I have seen outwardly, physically beautiful individuals that inwardly were quite nasty and not pleasant to be around. And then I've seen some people that folks would claim as plain or consider plain. You've heard the term plain Jane. Hope there's no Janes here today. But, everybody's different there, and yet I've seen those, and there's this inward beauty that emulates out of them, and people are attracted to them for more wholesome reasons than the one that is simply beautiful on the outside for a time. Here's Jesus' fifth reason. Don't seek what you are going to eat and drink. Don't keep worrying about these little things. The word here for worry doesn't mean feeling anxious. It means to obsess and be driven, to be preoccupied. He says all these things the nations eagerly seek. And we could put the reasoning this way. Look at what everybody else, everywhere else is doing. Look at what they're doing, what they're after. Are you going along with the crowd? Some of you probably heard this. If your friend jumps off the bridge, are you going to jump off after him? Or if your friend tells you to jump off the bridge, are you going to? Or just because everybody else is going to do that, does that mean you have to do that? Or are you going to march in step just because everybody else does it? We can look at the example in the Sunday, back in the day. Everybody remember when we had a newspaper? I remember the Black Friday, the day before Black Friday, the newspaper would be massively thick. Just all kinds of ads, all kinds of inserts. We look through a basic paper, though, what percentage of that paper is about money? They want your money. They're after your money. Maybe 90%, something like that. It's not just the business or financial section. It's the automobile section. It's the housing section. It's the want ads, the jobs, all the other advertising. Even the sports pages are talking about money and promoting getting your money, the baseball strike when they happen, salaries, and most of the front page and news articles, wars, crime, budgets, taxes are also about money, and newspapers about what everybody is into, and about 90% of it has to do with money. So the whole world is after money, and that's what counts as news. That's what people are interested in. But what about the Bible? The Bible also talks a lot about money, right? Not as much. You can say it's about it seems like more, but it's about 5% that directly talks about money, directly talks about property. But the Bible is 100% about what really matters. Like, what is your attitude towards money? And since people live for either God or money, what will it be? This book is about what really lasts. It's not iffy, it's what's certain. It's 100% about the living God, the one who made us in his image, who made us to live lives for something bigger and better than the stuff that we tend to worry about and the stuff that we define our lives by. I understand we have economic needs. I'm not minimizing. I hope I've established that. I'm not minimizing the needs that we have. We're not living, we don't wake up in the morning and everything we need for the day is right there. We do have to put out some effort. Jesus says, I promise you, your Father knows that you need these things. You do need a job. It's not wrong to provide for retirement, to pay your mortgage and to pay your bills, to own a car. Those things are not wrong. Your Father knows that you need those things. Now, you may not need everything that you have. You may not need everything that you're paying bills on or you're paying for. There's some of the things that we accumulate because of what was their name? The Joneses? The Smiths? But the things that we need, he knows what we need. He knows we need these things. But so what are we going to be about? Is your life about money? Everybody else's life is. The nations of the world, people everywhere, eagerly seeking these things. Jesus says, your Father will give you what you need. Your Father will give you what you need. Well, a lot of times we think we need more than he thinks we need, and so there lies the problem. If you just get the big things straightened out, you'll have what you need in the little things, so everybody else blows everything else out of proportion. God, we put everything else way up here, and God comes out a distant second maybe, but he'll give you what you need to live on if you need him in order to live. So much of this is about our relationship with him, who we are in Christ. What drives you? Is it your desire to know him a little bit more? John the Baptist said, I want more of him. So he recognized way back then that for there to be more of Jesus in us, there's got to be less of us in us. It's got to be more about what he wants for us, not about what we want for us. So what everybody else in the world is obsessed with, God puts those things a distant second. Jesus is on a roll here, and he gives better reason after better reason. His sixth promise, this is the most significant of all. Some of what Jesus has been saying, you might half get by reading the paper, looking at crows, looking at flowers, or thinking a minute about how useless it is to worry. Common sense, open your eyes. It's God's world. So life works the way he says it does, but you'd never see how God connects to the crows and the flowers unless he tells you. The sixth reason is really the capstone, and it's all about God. This is the climax of Jesus' argument. This is the best of all these better reasons not to worry. God promises you himself. He promises you himself. In essence, what Jesus says is your Father knows you need these things. If you are preoccupied with his kingdom, then the other things you need will be added on, will be given to you. Get your life to be about what your Father is about, and everything else will fall into place. And as easy as that sounds, it's not that easy, is it? It's easy to get our eyes on the things of this world. I remember, and we'll wrap this up here quickly. I remember, and that statement doesn't really mean anything. It's just help in the moment. But I remember when iPads came out and preachers started using iPads or tablets to preach from. I used to think, how obnoxious, how prideful is that? Like they're way above us, hoity-toity. But then I got one. And I figured out that I could change the size of print significantly and nobody would know. And I could see so much easier. So I guess God knew that I needed that. Jesus promises you him. He promises you him. Jesus makes this a personal, intimate, and generous as promise as possible. He wants you to really get this. Here you can stake your life and never be disappointed. He'll give you something you never have to worry about. Never. He knows your situation. He knows your temperament. He knows your personality. And it's his pleasure to give you the kingdom. He invites you to leave your anxious fretting about whatever and seek something else instead. He is more willing to give you the something else if we will let him. So what else does it look like to be given the kingdom? It's being able to say, Psalm 121, my helper is the Lord who made heaven and earth. Try wrapping your mind around that. My Father is the King of all kings and the Lord of all lords. I can walk boldly into his throne room, into his presence, and not worry about having to come out. And then after seeing all this, Jesus gives a seventh reason to live not to live a fretful life. And it's both a reason and an alternative. Having given you so much, your Father calls you to the radical freedom of giving your life away. Everything before was get, gimme, get, coming this way. We become anxious because we want to get. And then we have to control what we got. And so we get anxious about it. But Jesus wants us to give our life away, to just, we're not our own. Those are not words, just words. We're bought with a price. This world is not our home. We don't want to, with us, we don't want to lose what we got. We covet the inheritance because we want to get. We become presumptuous and kick back into a life of leisure and think that, we're fat cats because we have gotten, and everything is get, got, gotten, want to get, maybe I won't get, but it's all about get. But here, when you come to the end of Jesus' message to you, it's all give. It's about giving. And because you have been given, because you are being given, because you will be given a sure thing, a certain and a wonderful thing, no iffy, no maybe, maybe not, because there's nothing to really worry about, then he says to give. It's his pleasure to give to you so you can give too. That's where, when we get there, that's where our focus needs to be. And it's a process. It's a journey. As that sinks in, it is a marvelous transformation that happens in our life. You have no good reasons to let worries go. We know that. You become able to open our hands. We're able to give what we have, knowing that when we give what we have, Jesus is going to replace it with what we need so that we can give more of what we have. It's an attitude of trusting your Father and being able to live a life that's worth something. I can give myself away. I can use my gifts. My life can be about giving. There's a world to reach out to. There are people to love. There are jobs that can be about, that need to be done. We have a purpose in life. God's put us here. He has a plan for us, and we can give ourselves to that purpose. Your Father knows what you need. He's going to take care of you as we put Him first and seek His kingdom first and His righteousness. Then He will take care of everything. And so I say, prove me wrong. If I'm wrong, prove it. If Jesus is wrong, prove it. See what happens. Amen. Amen. Let me see here. I have come to the end of my time. Our mind is a battlefield. And there's so many things that go on in our mind that we need to get control of. I'm going to fast forward. How do you get a grip when the barbarians are rioting in the streets of your mind? So, Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 28 says, a man who has no control over his spirit is like a city broken into and without walls. How do you get a grip when barbarians are rioting in the streets of your mind? You know, whether they're gangs of criminals, suicide bombers, cities invaded, fires everywhere, a lion in the streets, chaos. Your mind loses its grip. Fear and anxiety have taken over. Nothing safe and certain. Anxiety is a universal human experience. And so it's one thing to say, don't be anxious. It's another thing to have a plan. I'm going to give you 6 things real quick. I'm not going to get into them. I don't have time. I'm just going to give you 6 things that you can do to put a plan together so you can start to not worry and start not to obsess. First, name the pressures. Name what's going on. You always worry about something, so what do you worry about? Get it down on paper. Second, identify how you express anxiety. These things that you're anxious about, how do you express that anxiety? Spot the signs. How does that show up? What's that look like in real life, in your life? Third, ask yourself, why am I anxious? Why am I anxious? Worry always has its inner logic. Anxious people are the folks, between the quotes, you have little faith. If I've forgotten God, then who or what has edged him out of my mind and started to rule in his place? And there's a lot we could say about that. Why am I anxious? Number 4, what better reason does Jesus give you not to worry? Which of those promises we just talked about, which one of those work for you, or which ones work for you? Identify them for you. Personalize it. 5th, go to your Father. Talk to him. Have conversation with him. Just throughout the day, just have conversation with him. It's not as if he doesn't know. It's not as if he doesn't care. Whatever it is, he knows. So confess that to him, validate that to him. And then, finally, the 6th step is to give. Do something constructive. Give something constructive. Care for somebody else. It's been a few years now, several years. I had been driving. I mentioned the new car that we got 3 years ago, which was a blessing. The car I had before that was a 2002 Ford Focus. I'd had it for 20 years, almost 300,000 miles on it. It had been paid off many times. It had been a good car for me. It had seen me through some difficult moments, but it was starting to sound like I was. And it was acting like I was, and so ended up trading it in, gave it to somebody else. But before that, our senior pastor at the time made a statement. He said, "Rejoice with those that rejoice." And I think that was right after he got a brand new pickup. And he was happy about it. He said, "Rejoice with them that rejoice." And I thought that through, and it took a little bit for me. But I started doing that. I started rejoicing, and I was happy for him. And I told him. And others, as they would get new things, and here I was still driving my Ford Focus. And I would rejoice with them. I would rejoice with others. And I still try and practice that today. Something good happens to somebody else, I try to let them know, I'm happy for you. That's great. And inside I'm thinking, I'd like to experience that. But I communicate. I rejoice with them. I rejoice. And it's a whole lot different than being envious. It's a whole lot different response than wishing that you were them or wanting what your neighbors have. Just rejoicing with them, giving of yourself. There's always some way to give yourself away. There's a song that says that. Give myself away. My daughter's eyes got real big. Dad's really going to belt this out? No, that was it. Yep. So, problems can be very overwhelming. We know that. I know that. I hear overwhelming problems all the time. And I mourn with those that mourn. We can worry. But what you've called to do is small. It's just a little itty-bitty thing. There's always something to give yourself to. And there's always some way to give. Jesus said more about this in Matthew chapter 6. The parallel passage to ours says, let the day's own trouble be sufficient for the day thereof. It's going to take care. Tomorrow's a new day. God knows where you're at. He knows your name. If you'll let him take charge, he will. And he'll do a great job. And you may not have the answer, and you're probably not going to have the answer, and you're probably not going to understand, or you're not going to know how or why or what. all those answers, but Jesus knows. So my recommendation to erase fear, to eradicate fear, is to give yourself, deal with today. Deal with today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Be about the business of today. Leave tomorrow's uncertainties to the Father. So, my final slide. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And your Father, if you don't know this, then get this in your head. Your Father is God. He is the creator of all. Don't worry. Trust him. Fear not. Obey his commandments. That is the whole duty of mankind. I sort of apologize a little bit. I think I took 3 extra minutes. But that's the break I gave you. And we'll start with there. Any quick, just real quick questions?
Can we see that last slide again, please?
The last one? Ouch. Now, any questions, thoughts? Anybody hungry? Well, we'll grab something. It was great of you to put something together. You've been very attentive. These are not just words. A lot of these words I've lived. Do I still worry? Yeah, still do. But then I have to come back to the understanding of who my Father is. He's got this. And I take a breath and say, okay. I hand him back the reins. I really hate saying stuff like that because I get tested just about every time. Yeah, but we're going to, in our second session, my daughter, which I'm honored to be able to team up here with this weekend, is going to be talking about trauma. She's very, very qualified to talk about this subject. There's a lot of pain in our world. There's a lot of trauma that takes place, which is not our fault. But there is help, and there is also a God. There also is a God that gets involved in that too when we let him. Amen.